name is Shannon Jamison, and I would tell you that I'm probably a little bit of a late bloomer in life when it comes to accepting Christ and surrendering to Him and only Him in my life. I was raised by a military family. My father was serving our country, not his family. He was overseas most of my life, so he was had kind of a distorted view of an earthly father and definitely a distorted view of a heavenly father. Not any time in my young life was church really a topic of discussion. We didn't attend church together as a family, and I didn't attend church except in the summertime when the church bus came by, and that was the cool thing to do, is to get on the church bus and go to whichever church it took you to. So love wasn't really spoken in my home as a child. At the age of 15, I was looking for love in all the wrong places, and I thought I'd found it. I met a guy in my hometown, and probably about 6 years older than I was, so he was already out of high school, already in a career mode. We didn't marry till the day after I graduated, and we had 2 children. Very dysfunctional marriage, not surrounded by God in any shape, form, or fashion. And I have to say that I had a divorce at the age of 21. So I had a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, many struggles. And I know God promises that we'll have trials and tribulations to go through. And I know that He promises us that He'll be with us through it. But at that time in my life, I knew of God, but I didn't have a relationship with Him. So it wasn't in my mind that He was going through it with me. I moved from my hometown, from Lampasas to Burnet, and I moved back and forth from Lampasas to Burnet to Marble Falls, and that was just through different eviction processes. I have to say that I lived in a house just long enough, maybe a month or two, and then I couldn't afford the payment, and then the eviction process would go through, and I would get just enough money in order to move to the next house. I think I made maybe $9 an hour, and then had 2 children. If I didn't have a home to stay in, I had friends that I would stay with, and if all else fails, I could sleep in the back of my car. I would say that a few years after that, I even was a recipient of, I don't know if y'all remember, but the Buckner's Boys Ranch was such a great influence in our community. When I finally was able to get into housing, low-income housing, which I could afford, they provided my home beds, couches, anything that I needed. And that same year, I was provided with Christmas for my kids from the Marble Falls Police Department. I worked on the weekends. I did graduate college and get a degree in the lab. So I worked on the weekends 36 hours so I could be home with my kids during the week, because $9 an hour didn't put your kids in daycare and enough to survive. Again, I knew about God, but I didn't have a relationship with God, and nor was I searching for one. Eventually my car was repossessed. Many walks I lived over by the Picayune, and thank God for baby strollers, because I could load up my kids, walk to H-E-B, get as many groceries as I could fit with my 2 kids, and back home. No big deal. About the age of 22, I actually met my husband, Jason, and he we together have 5 children. He brought 3 to the table, and I had 2. So we dated for about a year and got married, and we had a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a set of twins that were 6, and a 9-year-old. And I have to say, unfortunately, we were good Sunday Christians. We lived on Elm Lane in Marble Falls, which is just down from the Lutheran church. So no excuses to not go to church, because we didn't have to park anywhere. We just walked down the street. Attended most Sundays. Our kids were baptized there. Our kids attended confirmation, but it was more of a check the box. If you had asked me if I was a Christian, I would have said absolutely. We moved from inside Marble Falls to just a few miles outside of Marble Falls and fell out of church. It was just convenient when we lived in town. And I would have to say that we probably did not attend church for about 8 to 10 years. So the bulk of our kids' lives, they did not attend church. And after our kids were grown, the last child left home in 2011. And I would say that this is going to sound strange, but in 2015, my New Year's resolution was to find a church family. Don't wait till your New Year's resolution. You can find one today. About that time, Elevate Church and Rockpile Church both launched in the same time frame, just a matter of months apart. I'm not sure what led me to Elevate first, but I can say that I learned how to serve my church and my community. I learned what tithing was about. We became a small group leader. So many great things that I learned at Elevate. But after, and I will say that also at Elevate, I went to church. It wasn't a husband-wife type situation because my husband was not quite ready to return to church. And I'll tell you, God will use anything to bring your husband to church. Our pastor Shane at the time asked for someone to haul the church trailer. I've never hauled a trailer. That was so far out of my realm, but I raised my hand and said, I'll be responsible for the church trailer. I could take it from the pavilion home every weekend. When I went home and told my husband that, he had thought I'd lost my mind. He would not allow me to park the trailer in our driveway because he wasn't sure I could turn the corner without going over a little cul-de-sac area. So when I would come home on Sundays, he'd have me stop in the highway and he would come out to get it. That went on for just a couple of months, and before Jason joined me at Elevate also, and he began to serve in many different ways in Elevate. So I thank God for using a trailer to get my husband involved in church. We were at Elevate for about 2 years, and we felt a call for us to change churches, and we talked to Pastor Shane and Sandy, and we had made a decision to change to Rockpile Church. And when we told them that, that's what they said, is they said, you will never be good at being a part of a church where you just go in and sit down. You're going to have to be a part of a church family that you're actively serving, like a set-up tear-down church. And so they were going to suggest for us to go to Rockpile. So it's amazing how that all works there. So we started attending Rockpile in December of 2018 and have continued to serve and lead small groups and be very active in our church. And so I would have to say that that's probably 5 to 7 years total. That's probably been the best years of our life, is when you put God first and your spouse second and your children third. So I encourage anyone, if you're a late comer to get that right, it's okay, get it right, because it'll change your life forever.